Yes. So with this, moving ahead with the session ahead, may I please invite my colleague Rahul Binoy to kindly introduce the next panel theme and the eminent speakers for that. Rahul.
Yeah, that would. Moving on to the last panel of the day, the eminent speakers we have for this panel. The first speaker I'd like to introduce is an alumnus of Billimoria High School and was a youth athlete specializing in track and field as well as basketball. Graduated in anthropology and Asian studies from the University of Texas and completed her certification from the UTeach program at the College of Education UT Austin. Has been featured in Silicon India magazine's Education Leaders book as the most promising influential leader of 2019. She was bestowed with the Top Women Entrepreneurship in Education Award in 2019 at the World Education Summit, Mumbai. Please welcome Ms. Aditi Goradia, the Managing Director of Billimoria High School, Panchgani.
Welcome, Aditi.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you guys again.
Educator with over 25 years of experience in handling the 360-degree domain of education with a proven record of success in the business management of schools. She is the recipient of National Award for Excellence from Kanchipith Shankaracharya for outstanding work in the field of education. She has also been awarded the Visionary Leader of the Year at the Future Leaders Summit and the Best Director of the Year at International School Awards, Dubai. Please welcome Ms. Deepa Bhushan. She is the Director School CP Goenka Group of Schools.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our next speaker is an edupreneur by passion who strongly believes that the primary aim of education is to bring about a synergy between students, their parents, and educators. She is an electronics engineer by qualification and upholds the tenet that education should be dynamic and ever evolving. She constantly strives to strike the balance in creating lifelong learners while inculcating deep roots Indian ethos and values in them. Please welcome Ms. Astha Kataria, Managing Director of Ashoka Group of Schools. Welcome you, ma'am.
Welcome, Astha.
Our next speaker is a well-known name in the field of education. He is also the Vice President of the Early Childhood Association. He has an MPhil and a PhD in physics and an MBA in marketing. He is a regular speaker at major national and international conferences and seminars on education and entrepreneurship. He was bestowed with the Entrepreneur of the Year and the Most Successful Educationist in Early Childhood Education Awards in the year 2016. Edupreneur of the Year in the year 2017, and India's Greatest Leaders 2017-2018. Please welcome the founder, chairman, and MD of Sanfort Group of Schools, Dr. S.K. Rathore.
Welcome, Rathore, sir.
Finally, I'd like to
inviting me on this panel. This is always a privilege to share a screen with Chandan. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Feel blessed. Yeah.
Finally, I'd like to invite the moderator of this August panel. He's a visionary and a top-tier educationist. He has been addressing the challenges faced by young educators through these platforms to help them create a better education environment for future generations. Has been honored with several awards, including the Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2006 by the Governor of Delhi and the award for outstanding contribution to the Indian education system by the Independent School Federations of India. He is also a regular speaker at prestigious national and international education conferences and seminars. Please welcome Mr. Amol Arora. He's the Managing Director of Shemrock and Shemford Group of Schools.
Welcome, also.
Over to you, Amol, so you can take over the panel.
Thank you so much. Just let me.
Very strong panels. Always great to have you. 3 of our moderators are the panelists over here. Aditi, S.K. Rathore, sir, and Amol. You have been moderating in many of our events.
Yes, thank you, Chandan, for that introduction. Thank you, Rahul, for that. And I think request everybody else to get their cameras on. and it's going to be a good session, I hope. And because what has changed in the last 1 year has been absolutely something which no one in the education sector could have ever thought of. A sector which was considered foolproof in all respects, something which had not changed in 150 years since Victorian times, suddenly got hit by an avalanche which nobody could have prepared for. So it's been an amazing time for everybody. Everyone has shown their resilience. The education sector has innovated, created, managed somehow. And now as we look at the light at the end of the tunnel, and we see that things are going back to normal in most states. Some states have already opened: Pondicherry, Punjab, Assam. So I think it just signifies how much innovative, creative work has been done. So that's where I like to start from with each of you, as to quickly as to when it comes to, and the topic of course is about gamification and e-learning. But combined with gamification and e-learning, how has your organization uh, taken on the challenge? And going forward, a question to all of you is, how do you see yourself as a different organization going forward? And of course, if you could share some tips for the audience as well, because the audience would like to take away some really useful things that you've done, so maybe they can implement in their schools as well. That will be great. So I'm going to start with the same question to everybody, so that everybody gets a chance to share about how's their journey been for the past 1 year. So I'd like to start with Ms. Deepa, if you could just start and share how was it, what was the initial shock like, and how did it, then the reality sets in for a full year at home. We were all saying, no, 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 it's just a propaganda, it's media, no, 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 a few months, July ho jayega or September ho jayega. Then suddenly it dawned on us that this year looks like a gone year, right? So how was your experience?
Thank you, Amol, for this question. I think it's been a roller coaster ride, is all I will say. It's like we went hurtling into this year without even like knowing in which direction we were going. So even with the roller coaster ride, you at least know where it's going to end. We don't, and that's where we stand today. But I think one of the things I must say, that the complete education fraternity came together, took up this challenge, and everyone moved into the virtual space to say that education must go on. So education didn't stop. For children, there may have been some amount of learning loss, but I think not only in our schools, but I'd say not in the cities, even in the rural spaces, everyone took up this challenge and said, let's educate, and that's why we are here. And I think all stakeholders work together. So even the parents, to some extent, yes, initially the change for them was not at all easy. They found it very difficult, and we faced a lot of resistance. There was a lot of resistance from parents. Children were finding it different. Teachers said, let's do it. But I think some education managements actually said, no, we need to work in this direction. And I think everyone kind of then said, let's work and ensure this comes together. We thought June, we thought July, we thought August, and here we are in February, and sometimes we are listening to reports of another lockdown. So I'm wondering that, whether this new normal will continue to be the new normal. Every time we'd say this is the new normal, but we'll come back to normal. But this new normal seems to be extending. And I think, therefore, we're also relooking at the way we're educating children. And what do they need to learn for the future? And we've all gone back to the designing board. And we are all collaborating on platforms like this to learn from each other and say that what is the best way education can happen for children going forward, because I don't see us going back into the traditional format at all. We will need to move on, I'd say that. Amol, you're on mute.
That's the most common line we've heard, right? Unmute yourself, mute yourself, right? So we can that one line even 2-year-olds can speak now, and they know how to unmute themselves, right? So so Astha, what's been your journey? I'm sure it's been a similar journey, but what were your major challenges? And
so yes, yes, good afternoon, everyone. And just to connect with, I think more than we know how to mute and unmute, our students are like now very much tuned to to handle all these technology stuff. And so I'll begin with like, what, just a minute. Yeah. I'll begin with what Ms. Deepa mentioned. I'll just add to it that, educators and students, they adapted within no time. And that actually came as a surprise. I mean, the way, I think right from like March, mid-March, we underwent lockdown. In no time, we had our examinations. We could do everything with a hope that, yes, we are going to come to the normal life again. And with that hope, we continued and we started the new session, and how everything was there in the planning stage, implementing stage, one after the other, we didn't realize. And the whole year passed with like, all this reflection. I would just highlight a couple of things that as an institute, which we did and which I think added a lot of value. So one is that we continued with our happiness program even in our online world, where we focused a lot on building, a lot of developing their EQ and building a couple of attributes, which is designed in our curriculum. So that is something which we continued. We continued our informal sessions. So informal sessions by a class teacher where no studies were taken, but then that was purely meant to connect with students and have random conversations, and so that really worked very well in this entire phase. We did a concept of library on wheels where we ensure that we are like supplying our books to a select group of students, especially for our Cambridge branch we did, and we could really get a very good response again for this. Apart from that, we also ensured that our counselor sessions were in a higher frequency than before, just considering that we needed students to voice out what is happening, because in all this situation, as an organization, as individuals, we all were facing our own set of challenges. We all were managing our own new set of things to do. So students were also in a different shell, being locked down at home. It isn't difficult for that age group particularly. So all these things really helped. And yes, so as Ms. Deepa said, like blended learning is the future. Earlier we used to say that no mobile phones in school, and now the entire school is now in that gadget. So that has changed. That has changed for good, I would say. And when I look back, I see this year has given us a lot of opportunities in terms of teachers training, in terms of system establishments. So so far so good, in all terms. And it has given a complete different perspective, like, to the educator also, to the parent also. So now whatever change we have to bring, it's going to be very easy. It's going to be very easy to continue with the same pace. And it would work for the benefit of the child ultimately, is how I see. But yet physical world cannot be compared to the virtual world.
Yeah, I think we've settled that query that used to come before. Will technology replace teachers? I think we've settled that debate once and for all, and nobody's going to ask this question
Yes.
ever again to us. So
Absolutely.
that's and really good point. You mentioned that we're all
But
now questioning ourselves. Otherwise, we were victims of our own success and going into going like zombies into this is how it's done kind of thing, and it's made us question everything we did and how can we do it better. And it was like a wild west in that sense. So which was good for in the end for children, because we were questioning how do we ensure that they keep learning if they come to school or not. So that's been, and if, as you said, that malleability of people, parents, and that will help in the future, because that inertia that was there of status quo amongst parents, amongst teachers, when you try something, ma'am, why did you तो ठीक चल रहा है सब कुछ routine बना हुआ है क्यों बना हुआ, why do we do it? So that's now everyone's in a position to question that, and to those who want to bring about change, it's going to surely give more power. It's a great point. I think that's
absolutely,
something
absolutely. Thank
good
you.
point. So Ms. Aditi, what about you? How's your roller coaster in the dark been for you?
Thank you for the question. I really like it. Chandan, thank you so much for having me again. It's so good to see some of you again. We haven't gotten to meet per se this year, but it's good that we stay connected. I wouldn't, it's been a roller coaster, but an adventurous one. And in your intro, you said that we were under this illusion that the education system is foolproof. And this was a big, loud wake up call of the change needs to happen now. For years we've been talking about integrated education and all this other stuff. And then it was just like, boom, everyone level playing field. We're all in the same boat now, irrespective of, where we are, geographically, how many children you may have 3,000, we have 300, but it's all leveled because the struggle was the same. And as Deepa so rightly said, the fraternity came together. There was a lot more collaboration, I think, that I saw this year in terms of how do we get things done, because the learning couldn't stop. And I think that this shift, one thing with technology is that it's truly made it student centric now. Now it's no longer a teacher lecturing and the kids falling asleep in class. Now it's the kids deciding what's going to happen in that 30 or 45-minute session and how much they're going to let you achieve in your classroom. So the kids are driving the force now, and I think it's a wonderful shift. It was required, and there's no going back. Even if we come back to live classrooms, there's no doing away. And I think it's also made the adults really acknowledge the children for the power that they are. Because now you have a classroom where you're teaching and the kid immediately Googles something, and in 2 minutes in the online class says, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong, ma'am. Actually, there's been progress in this research or whatever. And I love it. I love that it's shifted towards focusing on the children entirely and, what direction they want to take things.
Right.
So apart from that, at Billimoria, it's been a struggle, but very similar. Astha, we kept in touch with the parents. The counselors were constantly calling them, one-on-one sessions with each child, because being a residential school, there was a lot of expectations from us and a lot of disconnect with the parents, between the children and the parents. So keeping in touch, one-on-one, smaller classrooms, it's been great.
Okay, thank you for that. I think a really good point you mentioned in the beginning, because I always used to call EdTech as a perennial bridesmaid. I've been hearing it for last 20 years. It's a next big thing. It never was a big thing. Nothing actually changed. It was very superficial. The maximum was something like a smart class, which is again very peripheral. You could do without a smart class and run your school successfully. Kids would get good grades. Parents would be happy. And if you have it, it's good. If not, it was more marketing and less actual change. And that's happened this year. And so that's a really, really good point. And I think also I like the fact that it's become student centric now. Now we are really competing, not just because they can check, but also we're competing with Netflix, because kids on an online class open a Netflix window right next door, and they're watching on Netflix with subtitles, and you have to get their attention. If now it's become more challenging for a teacher just not to deliver.
Well, their reading skills are getting better with the subtitles, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure about Netflix and the kind of content they have. It's difficult to find something which is less than 13 plus on Netflix these days. Yeah, Mr. Rathore, so how's your journey been, especially with the early childhood education? It was even harder because their parents are like, online doesn't work for kids. And so how was your journey with this past 1 year, and what innovations that you have that the audience can share? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amol, for having such a wonderful discussion. So Amol and me both are sailing the same boat. So early childhood education it was very difficult to convince the parent to bring the children on screen, because most of the parents were not ready initially to understand how we people are going to make the child understand the content what we wanted to deliver. But we took a different approach. Initially we everyone initially we trained our teachers. Then we organized training sessions for the parents also, because first we wanted to convince the parents that it will work. So initially my team organized Zoom sessions for the parents. What we taught our teachers, similarly we kept small groups of the parents to understand how we are going to deliver, what would be their contribution in their child's education now. Because earlier the parents were dropping the child in the school और वो नॉर्मली क्या होता था कि फ्राइडे को हम लोग बुक्स और डायरीज भेजते हैं, तो कई बार मंडे को वो एज इट इज वापस आते थे. पेरेंट्स कई बार नहीं निकाल के देखते थे कि उसको होमवर्क कुछ मिला है, उसका कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन जो स्कूल, whatever information school wanted to share with the parent, even they didn't know. But now they have to take the active participation in their child's education. So the team, what my team worked, that was amazing. And I'm happy to share, in my K-12 schools, it was very difficult to take out the fees. Initially, only 10-20% parents were, paying the fee. But whatever strength I had on my preschool platform, 100% parents were paying the fee on time. This was the good thing what I, experienced. One thing. Second thing, whenever I had parenting workshops, I always used to say कि mobile phone मत दो बच्चे को. And even I never gave mobile phone to my own children till they were in the school. I provided mobile phone to my son and daughter both when their last examination of 12th grade was there. But now mobile or screen, everything has to be given to the small children of 3-4 years. So n number of questions came from the parent कि सर आप ही लोग तो बोलते थे कि मोबाइल नहीं देना है, स्क्रीन के सामने नहीं बिठाना है, अभी ये सब करना पड़ेगा. Then we educate parents what kind of content they are going to see on the screen. It again matters. So I think the journey was tough for everyone, but it was beautiful. We learned many things. What the preschool people were supposed to deliver in next 5-10 years of the time, we delivered in 2020. So this is the advantage. We have find out some new way of teaching learning. Now if any like in Delhi NCR, whenever December came, तो पॉल्यूशन की वजह से स्कूल बंद हो जाते हैं, एनी रॉइट्स हैपन बंद हो जाते हैं, किसान यूनियन यहाँ पर रॉइट्स हो रहे हैं, उनके एजिटेशन हो रहे हैं, स्कूल बंद हो गए. तो अभी वी हैव फाउंड अदर अल्टरनेट वे टू डिलीवर द क्लासेस. दिस इज गुड थिंग व्हाट वी लर्न ड्यूरिंग दिस 2020 pandemic year.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think yes, I think it was more so challenging with the early years as well, and I think some people were able to overcome it and some were not. So it totally depend on the management, especially in early childhood was very different because it was not necessary for any child to come to school. It was optional. This before grade 1, it's more optional. So it was, if you don't get them along, then of course parents say, why do I pay the fee? If I don't pay the fee, then how do you pay the salaries? And then becomes a chicken and egg. Then how do you, if you can't pay the salaries, how do you run the classes? And so it was good. So good to know that your the way you approached it. So thank you for that. Deepa, I'd like to come back to you now. How do you think that, let's talk about going forward. So we all talked about what we've learned. What have you learned? And I think if, and we all agree on one point that we'll never be the same again. So maybe COVID has hit us just the way demonetization helped Paytm. It was never the same again. It became we changed from a noun to a verb, Paytm kar do, So how do you think going forward, how do you think school education is going to change now? What trends do you see which are irreversible? I mean, some things, of course, will go back to normal, but are there things that can be carried on going forward? What do you see? And that, this is a question I'm going to ask everybody because that's what the audience would love to hear. I'm sure they love to hear what your experiences are. How do you visualize education? Because right now it's all muddled up. Sanitization, parents not coming, some parents coming, safe, hybrid classes, the class 12, some 50% at home, 50% at in school. So right now it's a complete muddled up. But how do you see it once it settles down? How do you see education, school education especially, change in the coming months and years?
So I think just as work from home taught us a few things, which was there were certain things that you could do from home and you didn't really need to be in the physical environment of an office. I think similarly in the education space, we learned that there were certain things that you could do from home as an individual space, and certain things areas were where you needed the school. So I think the school campus has become more about the social emotional learning spaces, whereas the cognitive aspects to some extent, especially will be can be done by yourself, or within an environment where technology looms large, is a space, I'll say it like this. So one of the things that I see is that the hybrid model, and of course, there are various types of hybrid model, but the hybrid model of schooling is going to be an aspect which will continue. And I think we're going to relook at the importance of being in the physical space. So a few things that we did while we were working out this whole space, and we were working out the structure of the online learning space, we understood that there were certain activities where the children needed to take in information from a teacher, and there were certain things that we could do with a flipped classroom approach. So we started using that approach. Another approach we realized was where you needed to do group sessions together, and you were doing individual activities by yourself. So I'll give you a simple example. If a child is doing an essay, so the brainstorming session needs to be together, and then the child needs to write on their own. Now in a classroom scenario, what normally happens is you do your brainstorming, and there itself you are writing down and all that. We split up activities into these kind of aspects. So learning actually split up into understanding where was group learning, interaction, brainstorming required, where was individual work required. So we also relooked at assessment. So if learning was changing, the way of learning was changing, assessment was but naturally going to change. So instead of having a typical writing assignment only, we had the MCQs, of course, becomes very easy, individualized learning, you understand the level you are at. There were written assessments also. But what we started doing was we started using different tools for assessment. So we started also asking children to make videos of them explaining concepts and sending it across to the teacher. Now we know that, when a child is explaining a concept, because otherwise when you're writing it down, copying, all these things happen. But when a child has to explain a concept, the child has to have it clear in their head. So we were achieving the outcomes we wanted. So in the future, we're going to have to relook at all aspects of education. It's not going to be the same, but I see the hybrid aspect of schooling being very strong going forward. And children may come to school only for the social, physical, of course, the play aspect. And I think play needs to come in a very big way. And using technology for learning, which, like you mentioned earlier, and I remember just a year back at this time, I was at an Economic Times conference, and we were on the panel and we were discussing the fact. And I said, you know what, when I ask a teacher about using technology, she says, yes, I do use technology. And if I'd ask her, okay, what was she doing, she'd say, I make PPTs and show the children. And that was the level of technology being used. And today teachers are using all kind of apps, all kind of tools, which we never would have seen happen at this space, and they've embraced it. And I think this, now they've realized, has made their teaching more engaging. Learning is engaging, and this is something that's also going to go forward. So the integration of technology is going to be a huge space. The hybrid model is going to be a huge space. And I think every learning process to assessment, so the whole cycle of learning to assessment to feedback is going to be reworked, is how I see the whole space.
That was pretty comprehensive answer. I think that's yeah. So you actually see the whole cycle of how it's going to be, and of course, as entrepreneurs, also I had this question. I mean, I've had these discussions in our family also. I mean, the importance of going to office or being in office is highly overrated. Why was that thought always there that office jaake kaam hote hain, so why was that even required? Why does everybody need to be in office? Who needs to be in office, and who needs to be at home, and who can work beautifully and if they can work at home with flexible timings, maybe they're more productive for me rather than stuck, oh, it's 6 o'clock now, it's after hours, I can't disturb her and all that. So really, really good approach. And I think that's a really nice thought, that why do we do what we do, and let's question everything. So that's really nice. Next, Astha, so what's been your thing going forward? You talked about also this, also that we're not going to be the same again. So how will you be different? How will schooling be different now?
So what, kind of Ms. Deepa comprehended pretty much on all those lines. But so what she rightly said, for educators, earlier it used to be, what do I do with technology? And now the whole perspective is, what can I do now when I have technology? how can I change the way education can be transcended to students. So we say that yes, now students have gadgets. We have all the electronic features which can enable learning. We are talking about flipped classroom. We are talking about hybrid model and a lot more. So I think at this juncture, it is very, very important that we just don't provide them laptops to them and, expect the same kind of transaction. Rather, with this, we should see that education goes beyond those four walls and, a structured pattern. We should let the students mobile, and we should not confine them to classrooms, to specific learning spaces. It should go to a distributed learning model, where it can be taken as a self-paced learning. So whether we talk about executive programs or we talk about any virtual learning space, I think why it is revolutionizing the whole educational domain is because I can pick up what is my interest. I can pick up the skill which I want to develop, and that is something which is going to happen in future. So as a child, it's going to be extremely child centric. Provisions are supposed to be made by school, and that would only and only enable the school to exist. So educators, as Ms. Deepa also pointed out, are going to act more as facilitators, who are pitching in terms of more into emotional, social domain, where that touch, that feel, that mentorship is required. But yes, what I have to learn, everything is there. I mean, so school, the whole preview of school and also the curriculum. So also to add, the curriculum cannot be rigid now. It has to be more of skill-based curriculum. So it's not that one thing has to change. It has to have a complete 360-degree change, right from the way the curriculum is made to transacted, the way TLP processes, to assessment, to feedback. Again, what Ms. Deepa said. So it has to be a complete PDCA cycle, and it has to move in terms of the advancements, because I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have to move. If we don't move, then we won't exist. It's as simple as that.
Okay, I hope we do move faster than an iceberg moves. But I think that's a good point, that curriculum needs to be changed, and I think more so, especially, and the good thing is the NAP is also has come over, so it's forcing change from all sides. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be disruptive. It's going to be troubling for a lot of people as well, because we are happy in our success and our achievements. Suddenly now you have to learn a new way. But the next question is to Ms. Aditi, do you really share this euphoric image that Ms. Astha has given, or do you also feel at the end of the day it's going to be class 9th NCERT padho definition ratlo? Because one thing that's not changed is the standardized exams, right? So
they have to change it. It's coming, as Deepa and Astha both rightly put it, that only those who accept that the change has to come will survive to the next phase. Because even in a global context, right, is this going to sustain us as a nation to say, haan, theek hai, 8th standard tak, we'll try all this like really progressive stuff, but then sit down for 10 hours a day next year when you're in 9th grade, and none of what you've done, none of the independence you've gained matters, because you got to finish,
now it's time
to
get serious. Now get serious about your career now, right?
It's time to get serious.
Yeah. So that was all
so but
fluff and play.
So that change, as Ms. Astha put it, it's a 360 requirement all across the board, and hopefully the NEP will be adopted in the right way to bring that change in a positive manner, because there's understanding it, and then there's also the implementation, and the implementation has to also happen across the board. It cannot be only for a certain age group, and then as soon as the kids get older, it's like everything that you've learned so far doesn't matter, because you're going to have to go back to what we used to do 10 years ago. So that progress is required, and I think it's inevitable, because if you think about even the teacher skill sets, this year has brought more skills to teachers than a decade combined. in a span of 8 to 10 months, there has been, teachers have had the time and the ability to train more, because trainings from across the globe have been, brought to a screen, and there's more exposure, so hopefully we all take it positively. As you said, are we ready for the change, or are we, we're all comfortable with abhi tak to ho raha tha, abhi kyun? So that attitude's not going to fly anymore. We need to have a lot of openness. Everything from early childhood to the grade 12s, if we manage to sustain these children and carry them through this year, and we carried the parents and the teachers, even people who are teaching for 20 years, if we've carried them, then we have to continue. We have to grab the momentum that this year has given us and keep going, keep going forward, bring that change. And absolutely, I agree, Deepa, that it's about, like, so we're a residential school, and our kids are with us 24/7 for 9 months of the year. So even we have seen that more than the academics, it's the life skills and the social skills that the school environment needs to focus on. The learning, the children know where to get it from. The children know what they're interested in, where they want to get the information. If they're curious about a particular topic, they will come and tell you, these are the 5 places where you can find the information, and these are the 5 places you can assess me on it. And I've taken this quiz in this little game of mine, and look, I know so much. A 6-year-old can spend 30 minutes on his device, come back and tell you about all the layers of the earth because he was playing Minecraft. So, so the learning, we have to just be the, the enablers. It's the life skills and, the social skills that as educators, we need to start focusing on more. And then they'll get into college.
Okay, I sure hope the marks don't get impacted. Madam, ये सब ठीक है, but marks भी ध्यान रखना.
But concept learning तो आ ही रहा है ना. Even through this method, if they know the concepts, they can do anything even outside the textbook. So if we would all focus on learn the concept, it doesn't matter if it's the 10 sums in your textbook or from anywhere in the world. The concepts are the same. So yeah.
Thank you.
Just
Mr.
to
Rathore.
add,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes.
But marks is something that should just not exist. I mean, that's the culprit.
Yeah, if we had some, I think we only have teachers and principals in up as the audience. Otherwise, kids are going like, ये आस्था मैम का स्कूल में join करते हैं हम लोग. ये कौन सा स्कूल है? Right, so let's join this school. This is marks are not important. Mobile ले आओ, and you're happy to use your mobile, and marks, this will be euphoric for kids. So, Mr. Rathore, what's your take on how you think going forward, how would school education change because of e-learning, gamification? We talked about assessments, we talked about curriculum. How do you, and of course, NEP also will have a big impact. So it can't be, we can't think just technology, because NEP is surely going to have an impact along with technology now. So how do you see school education evolving further?
See, I think whatever NEP has, advocated in their document, this pandemic year has made us, all of us, to bring in our system before the NEP is going to be implemented. So many things, many kind of technological changes we have already done in our system, most of the schools. And as far as preschool education is concerned, whatever NEP says, Amol, you and me both are doing in our schools. So I think this technology is going to change the schooling like anything. I just give you an example. One student of ours in our former school, he was supposed to write some answer, and on his iPad or mobile phone, he told only. He was just dictating to Siri, you write. So he was dictating and Siri was typing. So this is the kind of innovation students have already done. So मेरे टाइम पर हम लोग जब एग्जाम होता था उससे पहले प्रैक्टिस करते थे, lots of notebooks we fill with the writing, so that whenever we are going to write the answer sheet, it should be written properly. But now that practices is already changing with the time. So now it is very difficult to make the child understand the importance of writing basically now. One thing. Second thing, all of us, we are sitting in metros and big cities, so there are less challenges for us. But for the budget schools, for the schools in semi-rural areas or rural area, it is very difficult to adopt the technology because they don't have that kind of resources. During this pandemic time, what I understood, what I advocated in many platforms also, why CBSE is putting everything, इतने PGT होने चाहिए, इतने TGT होने चाहिए, इतना infrastructure होना चाहिए, ये lab होना चाहिए. This pandemic year has shown that education can happen with less number of teachers, with less infrastructure, without infrastructure also. So I think we should focus, we means as society, education society, as well as the government agency should talk about or advocate about having shared teacher concept for the budget schools. What I see going to be a big change in the education field, if CBSE or any education board allow budget schools or rural area schools to have e-learning lectures from anybody sitting in the Delhi can take lecture for any village in the any district of the country. In that case, the child of that particular area or that particular school can also have access on quality education. So this is the kind of change our school education required basically. We all are from the good brands, and we are having good number of good set of children coming from good families or educated families or affluent families. But we should think about the children who don't have that kind of access. So I think हम लोग तो सब चेंजेस कर चुके हैं ऑलरेडी. पेंडेमिक ईयर ने हमें सब कुछ करा दिया. एडटेक कंपनीज का ही बिजनेस हुआ है, हमारा तो बिजनेस नहीं हुआ है. पूरे 2020 एडटेक कंपनीज, द कंपनीज हु वर बिहाइंड अस, नाउ वी हैड टू बी बिहाइंड विद द कंपनीज. हमने 4 फोन किए कि भाई ये इंप्लीमेंट करा दो. तो अभी वी नीड टू थिंक अबाउट the as education fraternity, we need to think and advocate about the budget schools children's education also. I think that is going to make a big impact in the education sector in the country.
Yes, thank you. Valid point, but I think the way education is structured, and there seem to be one set of rules for schools, and other players, the apps have a complete free reign of what they want to do, how they want to do. And I think it's time that schools also get that leverage. But it's also been a fact that when schools have been given power, many of them, I'll not say all of them, many of them have abused that power in terms of fee increases, in terms of how they've been fleecing the parents. So what happens is 90% of people or schools want to do a good job, but those 10%, that spoils the name, because that goes to the media. Media needs something sensational. The politicians need something which they can rally the parents around, and that 1 or 5%, 10% of bad apples spoil it for everybody. And suddenly, being in school management seems like as if you've done some crime. Or that's something that I think it's always been there. And that approach of the government not have that partnership with the school private players is very apparent right now. We are the only sector where the government tries to stifle us. In all other sectors that I say, they ask, how can we help you? Here it's like, how can we stop these guys? So I wish that happens, and I would, because in a way we are competing with YouTube and as education providers, and we would like to collaborate with everybody. The government has land, tech partners have resources, they have best practices, they have and which learning and the kind of intellect which can evolve into more personalized learning, which the technology providers can provide. We have localized, and we talked about how learning is going to be in our social space, and that's why schools will exist, because they'll continue to exist, because children need to socialize while learning. It cannot be held in isolation. No matter how fancy an app is, it's not going to be enough for preparing child for a life ahead. So I think that's good points, but at the same time, seeing how it's the real world out there, would not be very optimistic about it. But at least let's start talking about these things, and at least there would be sensible people who hear this. And
you're absolutely right, Amol. But at the same time, our agencies, our parents, and we educators need to understand the need of the hour. So actually, problem is we all are having access, and the children in the cities, big cities, having access on the app or technology or YouTube or anything and everything. But when we go 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers away from the cities. The school there doesn't, the children there doesn't have that kind of facility. So I think government should understand, and moreover, what I feel, it is a very futuristic thought. Government's role should be not a regulator. Should be the government role should be as quality control authority kind of thing. एजुकेशन होनी चाहिए, उनको कहना है, उनका होना चाहिए एजुकेशन ठीक से होनी चाहिए, वो ई लर्निंग से हो रही है, वो क्लास में टीचर आके कर रही है, वो फैसिलिटेटर की तरह काम कर रही है, टीचर की तरह से काम कर रही है, बट एजुकेशन रिजल्ट ओरिएंटेड होनी चाहिए, और उसका गवर्नमेंट शुड लुक ऑन द आउटकम ऑफ द एजुकेशन बेसिकली, देन ओनली द चेंज विल हैपन.
Yeah, it's a very valid point, because right now it's all input based evaluation, that you have to have this room size, corridor should be this much, classroom size, toilet should be number. Then how does it even matter now? We're talking about hybrid learning. If children are at home, should they even come to school on certain days? How many days should they be in school? So everything is now becoming fluid. Do you actually need a TGT, PGT scales? Can you have an Australian teacher teach kids native English? Isn't that better than having? So how does that reflect on the school's appointment list, right? So I think good there, but so what COVID has done is at least shaken everybody up, and I think that's the good thing. So quickly, so I think we have about 10 minutes to go. I think I'd like to finish this quickly. We have last few thoughts, Deepa, for the audience over here. What do you think, if you were to advise people on how should they look at this fluidity? I mean, it's a similar question to what I asked you last time, but again, since we're all now picking up from each other's ideas as well, what would be your maybe 3 recommendations for educators who are in the audience right now, for school leaders going ahead? Just 3 quick ones, so that we can quickly get everybody to share the 3 ideas that they could give to them.
Okay, so before I give the 3 ideas, I just have one thing to share. Is first of all, break away from all I'd say traditional notions or any kind of notion you have about the education space. You have to first break away from all those notions to accept really any new ideas coming in. The first thing is technology is here, and we are working with the digital natives. Accept it and know how to make it beneficial. I wouldn't be able to give you all the pointers here itself in these 2 minutes, but
that's perfectly fine. I think that's a very valid, important point. Accept digital natives.
Accept it and run with it, because only you are going to be able to run with it, and then also get the kids to be the teachers. So flip the learning process. We've always held on to the teacher on the stage, and I think that's my second point. That's shifted. So the teacher is also no longer the facilitator. Even that has changed. It's the child. The child is driving his or her own learning, and that's the space we're in. So accept that. And I'd say that's the second point I'd like to say. The third thing is, all stakeholders need to be engaged. We've always spoken about the fact that the parents, we form that triad, that if a child is at the top and the school and the parent are there, the child has more effective learning if they work together. Well, this has proved true this time, and to what extent. So I'd say all stakeholders, and when I say all stakeholders, I'm meaning even the after school, the co-curricular activities which really happen later, all those elements together for learning, need to be put together. And I have just one more fourth point, which I'm going to say very briefly, is break global boundaries. I think this year taught us that we could learn so much, because we all faced a similar issue. We actually went across the world. We learned from our counterparts and break those global barriers, reach out to each other. And I think we Indians can also teach internationally very well. And I think they have a lot of learnings to take away from us too. But break global boundaries, reach out to as many people to bring in best practices, and then work your system. So I'd say these are the 4 pointers.
Thank you. I think really, really good points. I think this will be some real good food for thought for the audience. Quickly, Ms. Astha, what are your tips, final tips to the audience?
Okay. So, I think Miss Deepa has again like kind of summed up all the core areas.
Yeah,
But
from
what
next
comes to
time
my
I'm going to ask
mind-
Deepa at the end. Like
No,
she's
what
really answering very comprehensively. And except
so
the first
I
time when
would
she got caught off guard, I think a bit of. Then second time she came back very strong with the questions, and I was like, should I change my question now? I was like thinking, okay.
So, just to add, like, what comes to my mind is I'm just sharing across, verbalizing our organization objective, we being into education. I think we should all look at how we can make the child explore. And when I say exploration, exploration is again connected to breaking the boundaries. Exploration is connected to leading the education in a practical oriented way. Exploration is connected to letting the child identify what is his or her liking, interest, skill, where he wants to develop. So let the child explore the world around him, and you just you just be the catalyst for the same. Second is
Yeah, you can't say facilitator now. She said you can't. We're not that now. So you have to come up with a new word now. Not meant.
no. What she says is absolutely correct. These all there has been a paradigm shift in all these terms as well. The
But I
way
think catalyst is a wonderful word. I mean,
so
please,
no,
we're
and
having
I,
a
I
cat.
truly
We have a
I truly
catalyst parent meeting this Sunday on Saturday, right? So the parents are wondering, catalyst काम कौन मिलेगा हमें?
no, I
But it's
truly
a
mean
wonderful word to use.
Yeah, I like the word. I like the word. Really nice. Yeah, please carry
so.
on.
Second is the whole purpose of education is to enable the thinking process. So let the child be a thinker. Let the child develop as a good thinker, because I think what we need the most is to be a good thinker, to analyze, to unlearn, relearn, and this is all only possible with the kind of dynamism, with the kind of disruptions which we see. uh, they have to be a lifelong learner. They have to they would be visiting and they would be experiencing much more shifts and many more changes than what this generation has seen. So they being a very good thinker would enable them to stand strong in case of any kind of challenge, and to face the challenge, to embrace the challenge. So I think these are a few things. And the last and the most important is to have, as Ms. Deepa said, our teachers can be the best teachers. So I would say that we being the foundation which we have, considering being Indian, the kind of ethos, the culture, the rich tradition, it is not just for the sake of saying, but it is there, and we see it has come back to us only in different terms, like the Gurukul system, the kind of value-based system which we have. I think that has to be extremely strong. So with these value-based, with these ethos, of course, the social, emotional quotient of the child is going to increase, and that is something which is very much going to be needed to the child more than his or her IQ. So I think these are the 3 points from my side. Thank you.
Yes, good. You could find some gaps in what maybe Deepa had missed out on. So good for that. I'm thinking,
It was challenging. It was not easy.
yeah, and on the spot as well. So Aditi, I
You've
hope
done a very good job.
yeah, Aditi, I hope you're thinking already.
I have
Right?
been thinking so hard, and all I
But
can think of is
but I think
that
I really like the how we Shastra approached it. It's about the child at the end of the day, So what we here for is a child. So we could look at things changing from the turn. Let's just empower the child and think about what are we preparing the child for? What kind of life, learning, unlearning, disruptive thinking, out of the box thinking, and very importantly, you mentioned something about values and which cannot be taught through a YouTube video or an app as well. That's where schools the role has going to increase now, and considering how people now it's see ours is a generation where we've seen the degradation of values. We've seen in the news people now are coming back to this. You've said it very nicely. It's been repackaged and maybe come back to it, just like yoga came from the west and became a fad in India after they said it's a good thing. Otherwise we never look sorry what's yoga about. So I think values are something that I think that importance is actually going to go up, and people will go for schools where values are actually integrated in their whole approach, and that's something very nice that you put up. So yes, Aditi, time for you for your 3 tips.
I think we've had like all the tips summarized by these two lovely women here. So I'm just gonna kind of add a little bit to that. And I would say the first thing I would say to any educator or school leader is be brave. because all those things, all that change that we were afraid of or cautious about, will technology take over the teachers and all those issues, they're not a question anymore. It's a reality. Technology is not going to take over our teachers, but we still have to go hand in hand. We've seen it. There's no debating it anymore. Our children are going to drive the learning. They are going to be the empowered ones. And I absolutely agree. There's no facilitation involved anymore. Now it's catalyst. We've got to come up with a better word, really. Next time maybe we can get together and talk about that. What is our role? But be brave, because the momentum is there, and this is the time to take it forward in terms of training, in terms of skilling ourselves, in terms of collaboration. So my second point would be, there are no trade secrets anymore. There is no, I'm not going to tell you what my school is up to. There is no competing for admissions anymore. So collaborate. There is something each of us is doing that is so beautiful that the other can adopt. And let's share freely, because at the end of the day, as you said, it's about the children. It's about what kind of citizens we want to raise across the globe. And together, so many good things can be created. So many good people, well-adjusted adults, we can be raising them. So collaboration is key, and let's not be afraid of that either. Yeah. Applicability. And I think the third thing is, have faith in your team as a school leader, because they did carry us this year, and they can. They do have it in them. So, let's have lots of faith in our team and empower them, give them the resources, give them the exposure to take things forward, because they will carry each of our institutes ahead. That's my three.
Thank you. Thank you. Really well said. I think the biggest one, you got a clap from Deepa as well about that. But our teams who have really. So final thoughts from you, Mr. Rathore. 3 tips, quick tips for, I can see the people are already pushing us off stage. Chandan, एक side पे हो जाओ अभी. Last one question बचा है, right, Rahul? So Mr. Rathore, yes, the famous line. You are muted.
Yeah.
Now, अब आपकी famous line आएगी. Can you hear me?
No, I never. Okay. So I think Deepa clapped for Aditi just because Aditi find out something out of the Deepa's context. कि Deepa ने सब कुछ बोल दिया, Aditi के पास कुछ बचा ही नहीं है. But Aditi find out something to speak on. So that's why Deepa clapped. What I understand during this 2020 lockdown period specifically, the parents who were earlier were not so involved in the child's education, who were not so close with their own children, they have come closer to the child. They have immediately involved in the education of the child. And there was a big gap between the teachers and the parents, because whenever any PTM happened, then only the teacher and parent meet. So now I think during this lockdown period specifically, I quoting, parent, teachers and children come closer to each other. So I think this is a good, I can see this is a good move. Now frequently parent and teachers can talk on Zoom call to share the feedback about the child education, about the development of any development in the personality of the child, and they can guide child in a better way. So I think whatever technology we were talking about, बच्चे से related जो भी हम ऐप की बात कर रहे हैं, हम course content की बात कर रहे हैं, I am seeing this thing out of the context. Parent and teachers can guide better, can look after better the child now because of this technology's platform. Yeah.
So I think, so till we find a better word for facilitator, we go back to teachers, right? So the old word as well, until we find a better word. So thank you so much. I think this was a really good session. I'm sorry we just run out of time. Chandan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. You can take few questions if you would like to from the chat box or Q&A. If it is
okay, sure. Do we have some questions? Okay. There's a question from Dr. Akhtar. What are you seeing the status of education inequality in the near future, 5 years from now? Any strategic planning or strategies you find in NEP to resolve these education inequality between rural and urban, rich and poor. Okay, between the haves and the have-nots. So, okay. So what is asked for is, do you think the NEP is going to resolve the differences? Because Mr. Rathore talked about this a bit, and we have this two kind of Indias living. One is the kids who go to our schools, and the others where one teacher teaches 7 grades, there's not even a toilet, and the person doesn't even show up. So we're living in a country with very two diverse kind of education systems running parallelly. One which is worse than sub-Saharan Africa, and one where we aspire to be a Singapore. So do you think the NEP, anybody sees any hope in the NEP, or is there hope first? And secondly, if there is hope in the theory, do you think, given the track record of the government, do you see it being implemented at the ground level as well? What are your quick thoughts on that? And meanwhile, if the attendees, if you have any more questions, please do write in the chat box. We've got some time to answer questions. So what are yours?
So
Anybody wants to take it?
I'll just add here, like, as you said, NEP, yes, in theory, it is giving us a lot of hope. Only thing, the implementation has to go to that effectiveness. And, when we are talking about education in rural or urban sector, what is most important is what kind of teachers upgradation is happening. Because it's not important of, like, whether I am having an infrastructure like which is like a 5-star infrastructure, or if I'm teaching students under, like, under a tree also. With this global teacher award also, Mr. Ranjit Desale, he's also an example to this. So transformation can take place anywhere, but what is most important is that how we can shift the education in a perspective where government also eases out certain norms, give us some facilitations in terms of rules and regulations, wherein people look up to become an educator. People opt for this profession out of their passion and not out of where we see majority look at is as, like, as a comfortable job to take up. Majority is the female fraternity, and the kind of scaling up which an institute who really want to perform does is purely the credit of that institute. But what are technical courses also when it comes to BEd, BSc, BEd, integrated BEd programs? To what level of effectiveness are they bringing when they are really creating an educator? So I think, again, just an NEP in action needs a lot of back-end actions, like, to be taken, so that we see an effective transformation. And that would need a push from all the angles, right from the way education is looked at today, even from a general layman's perspective, also the kind of framing which is going slowly eventually it's more of a business setup which is looked at, where it is such a noble profession, where it is completely, looking at institutes which are believing in transforming lives of individuals, in shaping up individuals. So, yeah, so, everywhere that has to shift, and I think government has a very, very big role to play here. That respect towards educators has to come in eventually. Yeah.
So my personal take is that until teachers are responsible for manning the election booths, nothing's going to happen with the government school teachers. Nobody's going to take action against them. Nobody's going to give them the carrot and stick will not work. There's no carrot and stick. There's no motivation. So I think it's going to happen. There's going to be a slow percolation when it comes to actual implementation, because without that, if there's no incentive to do something better. So I think the NEP, what it does was, and Mr. Rathore also said this, most progressive schools are already doing those things. It's not something, oh wow, acha aise padhana chahiye tha. We never knew that. We knew all these things and we were doing that. This is more for the rest of the country. So will it happen? The good thing is, at least it tells people this is where we want to go. Now let's see how it actually shapes up. How do planners and implementers actually work with this? Do they see a role for private players? We don't know. We've got one more question. We've got some messages for Aditi. Ajit says, hi, great to see you. Vellore agrees with you, Aditi, for something I forgot what. And somebody says he's my friend for 20 years. So hi, hello. So, and what else do we have? Okay, yeah, we got a question which is out of syllabus. Mr. T.S. Ramarao, why do children walk to school and run back home? This is not nothing to do with e-learning and gamification. So this is an out of syllabus question, but if somebody wants to take it, we'll be happy to. Why do children walk to schools and run back home? Why is school still a drudgery for most children? Why are the memories of school still painful? I think that's what he wants to say. Why is it? What's happening? Do you see that happening, and or is there a solution for that? Or if I have to put make it into a syllabus question, will gamification and e-learning make schools more interesting? Let me let me twist the question a bit to make it a syllabus question of today's topic. So anybody wants to take that? Do you see that happening of children running to schools and walking back home? Is that good? At least you know what, honestly, I'm seeing the schools that have opened, it's actually happening. Kids are actually crying not to go home. Because after a year of that, I think this is happening right now. But anybody else wants to talk to them?
Our kids are crying to come back to campus, and we've been saying no. So we've had our oldest kids come back, and they're so happy, and the rest are dying to leave their parents. So no kids.
Let's not use the word dying to leave their parents. We're in a COVID situation right now, right? So
yes, that's true. I'm so sorry. I take that back. So, but they're very eager. They're very eager to come back. But I will say, I was the child who hated going to school and was would run home. And I think that's changing, though. I don't think that's true any longer. I think kids love, most kids do love going to school.
So you believe separation makes a heart grow fonder. You're in that kind of mode, right? We've taken it away. Now everybody wants to go back.
Now, I think now the parents wanted more.
Yeah.
Than the kids.
This pandemic year had taught children also it is better to go to school rather to remain at home. घर रहने से अच्छा है स्कूल चले जाओ कम से कम 6 घंटे 5 घंटे तो मम्मी पापा नहीं कहेंगे कुछ नहीं किया तूने.
And I think it's the same said for parents. Parents have realized that it's the best for our child to go to school.
Parents and students both have realized this is better to go to school.
Yeah, I think the teacher's image in the parents' eyes has gone through the roof. They're like, "Ma'am, हमसे तो 2 नहीं संभलते, आप लोग 20 कैसे manage करते हो?" Right? So parents are. So they hats off to teachers now. They've realized how difficult a job our teachers do in the classrooms of managing and teaching them as well, right?
I think traditionally it was true that kids did not like school as much as they liked being home, because home meant play or free play and school meant a rigid structure. But that is changing. And yes, gamification and more engaging classrooms will make a huge difference as well, because we're connecting at the children's level now. Now it's not an adult teaching a child. So it's getting better.
Let's hope for that. Amen to that. And Chandan, I think that's all we can take. There are no more questions. Somebody says hats off to the Ashoka group of education. So somebody's taking their hats off. Now I think they put their hats on. And with that, I think I had a great time. I enjoyed it. So thank you so much, Chandan, for inviting all of us. I think this was a fantastic learning and an enjoyable session that I think, and we all will move forward. I hope the attendees also who were there, they took back something from this session which they could implement in their school. That was the whole idea that Aditi also talked about, collaboration. Let's not now try and have that attitude. So when we talk about change in teachers, parents, school leaders, I think school leaders are also changing in the sense that, and you picked up a very important point, that let's all collaborate. And thanks to you for creating forums like this, where we all open up, share, and learn as well at the same time. So thank you so much for this wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Amol. I mean, you have been really pretty hands-on and with all your humor and wit. And I think it kept all of us engaging. It was a very fluid conversation which we had.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great moderation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great moderation, great learning, very powerful talk session, deliberation. Like always very excited to, hear this and witness this panel. Considering of Mr. Amol, SK Rathore, Aditi, Astha, thank you so much for joining us in this forum. I guess we are for the first time engaging you. And Deepa, she has been there in our forum earlier also. So this is a mixed blend which we came since start of this session with our special note addressed by Director IIM Raipur, and then a panel discussion on higher education, and then a blend of school and preschool. Definitely sets the entire understanding with life examples and your case studies which you have witnessed at your campuses, and how children are so excited hearing from Aditi and many of your schools that people are so excited coming back to the campuses again. So I truly, along with you, enjoyed a lot. I thought that session keeps on continuing because I guess gamification, e-learning are the talking trends and the talking points of the hour. A definite justice could be done if we can have a proper session on this particular topic itself.